Week one is officially in the books. We talk fantasy. Gozilla Media's fantasy football podcast is here. Good. Rex, you're here. You waited a full 5 seconds to hop into this one. Wonderful. Before we get into the week one headlines, let's talk about Mohawk Honda. Selection is king when you're looking for a new vehicle in Glenville, New York. Gozilla Media is going to be there next Thursday. Gozilla Media, Levac Goz, 4 to 5:30. We'll be there in Glenville, New York, and hopefully you can join us so you can find a new vehicle, whatever it might be, whether it's 2022 or 2023. September 22nd, we'll be there live. Shout out to the Harridan family, Brian and Cam McKenna, and more. Mohawk Honda, where they always go out of their way to please you. All right, guys, week one headlines. I guess there's 4 people on this one. He waited a full 10 seconds to hop in. What do you guys?
Up, Rex? What's
hey,
up,
say hi. What jumped up to you guys the most here after week one fantasy football action? Chet, I will start with you.
Oh, football's back, baby. Like what an unbelievable early window of football games, whether you're a fantasy player, just a fan of the NFL. Like that's what we were waiting for. I know some people said it was a slow start, that first half. Like, I mean, I loved every minute of it. But then when we hit like 3:00, there was an hour of just pure mayhem. I think I texted you guys, I hate kickers at that time just because you're getting all those misses and your negative fantasy points for kickers. And I think they should be eliminated from the game. But from a fantasy standpoint, I think one of the things that really stood out to me from week one was backup running backs shining / poaching from, some fantasy stars. You look in Detroit. Jamal Williams getting 2 goal line touchdowns. You look in Philadelphia. Yeah, Miles Sanders finally broke the drought and got a touchdown, but also got 2 touchdowns taken away with Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell scoring touchdowns. Isaiah Pacheco found the end zone when Clyde Edwards-Helaire already scored twice. So players that could have massive fantasy value are getting handcuffed by these guys that are successfully finding the end zone. And so in the age where it's really hard to find that workhorse running back, yes, Jonathan Taylor is a workhorse. Yes, Derrick Henry, although Dontrell Hilliard also found the end zone as opposed to Derrick Henry. So I think that's one of the biggest things that I'm sure frustrated a lot of fantasy managers out there was backup running backs stealing big points away from their RB1, RB2.
I was really intrigued and shocked at some of the value of those wide receiver twos. You obviously had some that it, when you look at a Gabe Davis, you can't really look at the Niners game because of the monsoon that was going on. But you look at an Adam Thielen and in this case CeeDee Lamb is number one. Some wide receivers this week just absolutely busted. And I encourage everybody just to go and look at your league's results over the week. There are teams way up here and there are teams way down here. There's a couple that are in the middle, and the scoring variance this week was unreal with a lot of the different things that went on. Dak Prescott going down, CeeDee Lamb being bad. A lot of first string running backs really struggling and only getting a couple points. And then the tight ends this week were brutal. So the scoring was super low for majority, but then you had those teams that were just out of control. So this week I feel like was one of those weeks where you weren't waiting for the last minute to watch how your fantasy matchup was going to shake up, unless you went against somebody who was also a low scoring option and won by 1.6 points. So
what impressed me is how the top 5 delivered this week in fantasy. I think we were all nitpicking on who should be wide receiver 1. Is it Cooper Kupp again? Is it Justin Jefferson? How about Jamar? All 3. If you drafted one of those 3, you are ecstatic. You might have been torn heading into your draft of which guy, and you're trying to figure out, is Justin Jefferson going to be the new Cooper Kupp because of the new head coach who's coming over from LA? Is Matthew Stafford? Those guys were fantastic week one. And Jonathan Taylor also delivered, picked up right where he left off. It's those guys that were the later first round picks, maybe the picks 5 through 10, where you're kind of looking at yourself like, man, did I make a mistake taking Derrick Henry? Or is Austin Eckler finally going to slow down and not be what he was the previous 2 years with Herbert. I'm not as worried about Austin Eckler. Derrick Henry has me a little bit worried, and we can dive into that a little bit later. But I think for the most part, that top 4, top 5 picks in most fantasy drafts all made their managers feel really good about those decisions.
Saquon back.
Yes, Saquon Barkley is back. And even to add to what Chet said there about wide receivers, Stephon Diggs was really good.
Oh, yeah.
And Devontae Adams was really good if he's in that 4th spot with 10, 141, and 1. So all those high picks performed. Those picks that maybe in the past weren't as consistent showed up. The 0 running back people. Some of you are holding your own parade through the streets of whatever city you have your fantasy team. Yeah, some of those teams not constructed the right way may have bombed. But with those wide receivers that we just mentioned, plus a guy like a Michael Thomas, Cordero Patterson, depending on what his eligibility is in your league, he should be a running back, though. But like Kareem Hunt, Rex Burkhead, all these guys you could have waited for, all had really good games as a running back. And the 0 running back people are now dancing in the streets saying, we're smart, you're dumb, la, la, la. And there's a lot to that of maybe the future of fantasy, of how we look at that running back position. That's what jumped out to me fantasy-wise, was that both you guys nailed it. A lot of high scoring, a lot of consistent players living up to the draft hype. And if you drafted a certain way, you can really stick your chest out a little bit and say, I knew what I was doing on drafting. I feel like the trend's going to happen. And Chet, I'm going to swing it back to you because you kind of gave a nice tease there of a trend you feel like might continue. You mentioned, and you guys can go either way with this, either players you think will be really having good seasons or struggling. You quickly mentioned Derrick Henry, and you see concerns out there in Tennessee.
Yeah, because what holds him back in non-standard formats, so we're talking half-point PPR, is he doesn't get targets. We're talking a 0 reception game. And so he got, 82 yards on 21 carries. He is a very touchdown-dependent running back. And, yeah, in previous years, he gets those touchdowns. But in weeks like this where he's held out of the end zone, you're probably not going to win your matchup, because 8.2 points out of a top 5 pick out of your RB1 is simply not going to cut it. And with these other guys that are picked around the Derrick Henry draft area, they get a lot of targets, they get a lot of catches, and that salvages maybe when you don't find the end zone. But if you have 5, 6, 7 receptions, that makes up the difference. And so that's why with Derrick Henry and now the emergence of Dontrell Hilliard, and it kills me to say that because, as you guys know, in our Dynasty League, my new team name is I Hate Dontrell Hilliard, because he cost me a championship. The opposing team played Dontrell Hilliard in week 17, and he scored one of those. He's got the big play potential. He's an explosive back. I can admit that. And he also is their receiving back. And so, if Dontrell Hilliard morphed into Derrick Henry and Derrick Henry got those receptions, I'd have no worries. But because Hilliard, for a team that, the other thing that made Derrick Henry so successful in years past is not only did he find the end zone, but they were a team constructed to get an early lead and then just feed Henry throughout the entire game, bruise the defense. And if Tennessee, which I think they've taken a step backwards, if they're trailing in second halves of games, you can't just run the ball on first and second down with Derrick Henry and expect yourself to catch up. You're going to have to rely on Ryan Tannehill in these games. And if you're relying on Ryan Tannehill, Dontrell Hilliard is actually a better option in passing downs. So I don't know. I don't feel really good about Derrick Henry right now.
Ray, is there somebody either stand out or going the opposite way that even after week 1, you're like, ooh, or yay?
I have to look at Barkley. I just talked about how high I was on him. I think the underrated stat that people look at, the 168 rushing yards that he had and some of those explosive plays, the dude had 6 targets. He was targeted out of the backfield a lot. And with the struggles that Daniel Jones showed with being able to push the ball down the field, how often is Barkley going to be used as one of those swing pass routes? Also, that offensive line from the passing Tennessee did a really good job of blitzing him and really picking up a lot of what they were doing on the offensive line. So it forced Jones to get it out quick. So Saquon Barkley ran fast. He looked strong. He looked powerful. He looked like he had nothing wrong with him over the last couple of years. So I loved the way Saquon looked, not just from the rushing game, because everybody's going to talk about how he ran the ball. it's those targets that are, him. He's going to break one. He's going to go for 70 yards on one of these receptions for a touchdown. And if he's going to continue to get 5, 6, 7 targets, you're kind of getting excited there. The only thing you want to be cautious of is the Christian McCaffrey effect. Is the usages up there? Some of the wear and tear on his body's already happened. So if he is touching the ball 30 times a game, what does the wear and tear look like for down the stretch? But still, I mean, he looked like he had no signs of slowing down this week.
For me, it's Philadelphia and Denver in two opposite ways. Philadelphia is really good. I know they played the Lions week 1, but A.J. Brown, it is not just a deep threat. Jalen Hurts is trying to find him. They're balanced. Let's all cash in our ticket, by the way. We all said Miles Sanders was going to score, so Miles Sanders finally ends that. Philadelphia is really good, and Jalen Hurts is going to continue to be a fantasy stud. Imagine if you can hit a 250, 300-yard passing game. That's possible in Philly. Denver. Our most recent podcast, we talked about what's the most balanced top-to-bottom fantasy option. I don't know if it's just fresh in my mind because of the Nathaniel Hackett nonsense for the 64-yarder, but at one point in the game, I loved Cortland Sutton in the preseason. I actually didn't know if he got hurt or wasn't playing, and then the carries are going to Melvin Gordon, who's got over 20 fumbles in his career the last 3 seasons. Javonte Williams had some nice runs, but you could Chet, I think you might have had this post, or maybe it was about another team about coaching not doing the right thing or giving him the football more. That might have been a different fantasy player you posted about.
Yeah, that was the Williams versus Swift.
Another Williams.
Yeah,
that's right. So yeah, Denver's a mess. Like, I don't know where and Jerry Jeudy's really good. He had to play on the sidelines where he just turned on the Jets and took off. Denver's a mess, and we could also argue the Rams are a mess because everyone loved Cam Akers, and Cam Akers, I mean, there were jokes about the lack of Cam Akers usage till Tuesday about what was going on there. And a lot of that, I don't know when it's going to change. And at least fantasy-wise, the inconsistency is going to hang over a lot of those managers for the rest of the season.
Can we just non-fantasy for a second, just talk about what happened in Denver? Like I don't know about you guys. I went to sleep on Monday night just shaking my head. Like, I explained it to my wife, who doesn't watch football, but I was like, it was almost like I needed a therapy session. And I'm not a Denver fan, and I didn't have, I actually did have McManus on some teams. I wasn't mad that they attempted the kick, but it's not like my fantasy teams were hanging in the balance. I know for other people, it absolutely was in our dynasty league. Someone needed like a point, and they had Javonte Williams and Cortland Sutton on that last drive, and I was like, oh, you won. Like, one of those guys is going to pick up the next 5 to 10 yards. But like, I tried to form this into a tweet and I decided not to send it, but I always used to get mad at my mom watching NFL Sunday, and, we'd all be sitting there as a family watching, and she'd see someone drop a pass after getting like hit by Brian Dawkins. And she's like, how do you not catch that? I'm like, mother, you don't understand. Like, that hurts. Like, that's hard to do. And she's like, I don't care. He's paid to catch the ball. I'm like, woman, zip it. I will never sit here and say, I could have made that throw. I could have made that catch, that run, that tackle. Like, these guys are freaks. I could have coached a better 2-minute drill every single time compared to what Nathaniel Hackett did. And I think that about 90% of people that were watching that game, like, it sounds silly. We all play Madden. You had 3 timeouts in the bag. You had the ball. That drive started with 4 minutes left?
Yes.
Like, so much time. And from when they hit that 1 minute mark on 4th and 5, I guarantee all 3 of us would have handled that extremely better. And I just can't get over how poorly that was botched by former Syracuse Orange offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett.
Just, I agree. I don't even know what to say because Vegas is smarter than all of us. Every single one of us. Vegas has an inside scoop. Like, there's no goddamn reason Denver should have even come within how they lost that game. They had
what was the spread? 2.5?
6.5.
Oh, so that wouldn't have mattered. So like if let's say Russell Wilson got 20 yards and then they kicked the game winner.
But here's where I think Vegas, they just teased us all. They said this is going to be such a good spread. Like, everybody's going to put their money. 87% of the money was on Denver, and
to cover 6.5.
Yeah, and
wow. We were all impressed by Geno Smith, and now we can kind of get back into fantasy.
Jeez.
I think everyone in that Seattle offense just got a boost. heading into where we probably ranked those guys heading into the season, I think Gino looked good. Like, I can't believe I'm saying that, but wow. What a performance from Gino. I think that gives you a boost on how you feel about DK. If the passing game's better, you must feel better about Rashad Penny getting some better running lanes, right?
Well, guys, you said it too about Gino, about having he marinated for 7 years behind some decent quarterbacks, and finally put on a team that has a pulse, and lo and behold, here he is.
The Geno Smith conversation, I want to put a pause on that for a second because I feel like it is a perfect conversation. I'm actually going to lead off with the Geno Smith take on that coming up in our newest segment. If you followed We Talk Fantasy, we've had a segment in the past called Monday Mirages, or Mirages, what was real, what's overreaction. We're putting a little new fresh twist on it this fall. But before we get into that new segment called Believe It or Not, the week 1 edition, we want to tell you about our friends over at Lily and David Fine Jewelers. If you're looking for something special this fall, maybe you're hitting the fall weddings like I am. I'm officiating a wedding this Saturday. You got to make sure that what your wife, your fiance, your girlfriend is wearing to those big special events is great. Now, maybe it's the wedding band, maybe it's the engagement ring, maybe it's that great piece of jewelry, the earring, the necklace, whatever it might be. Alyssa and David over the crew at Lily and David Fine Jewelers will help you find exactly what she's looking for. Her style, her fashion, and more. They'll find exactly what fits. Family owned and operated business. They want to make sure they can help you get compliments for years to come. And I know from experience, the wedding band is right there. I don't want to move my hand just in case I kick the Wi-Fi again. Lily and David Fine Jewelers, Route 50, the Shops of Wilton. Check out their new store, their selection. I'm actually going to be in there next Friday. No event, just hanging out, saying what's up, hello, telling them all about baby number 2 on the way. I love that relationship I have with Alyssa, David, Tammy, Jacob, everybody over there. Check them out, Lily and David Fine Jewelers. This fall, you want to watch hours upon hours of football. Make sure that someone special in your life is taken care of. Okay, let's start with Geno Smith. So here's how Believe It or Not it's going to work. Very similar to Mirages. We're going to say a statement out loud, and the other 2 people have to actually believe, or excuse me, the other 2 people have to remember or guess if we believe that statement or we don't. So I'll lead off first with the Geno Smith conversation. Geno Smith will be the Seattle Seahawks starting quarterback for all of 2022. Chet, Kyle, that's my statement. Do I believe that statement or do I not believe that statement?
I think you do. It's tough because injuries happen. So I think you're going to hopefully exclude that. If it's just going to be performance-based, I do think you believe that because Drew Lock is garbage, hot garbage. That's my take. What do you think, Kyle?
I'm going to go not believing. The only reason I'm going to do that is because of our giant conversation of over with week 1. So was this the flash in the pan? Do next week that we actually see what we've seen from Geno Smith in the past? Do I believe that? No, I do believe Geno will be the starting quarterback, to exactly what Chet said. Drew Lock's terrible. And I don't think that Geno Smith will take too many regressions. I don't think he's going to be the same quarterback that we saw under the bright lights on Monday night.
I think we did see peak Geno Smith. Like I don't think it can get better than what we saw. I mean, he just looked, even though I thought some of his passes were awkward, like they delivered, but like some of his roll out lob to the tight end, it just kind of looked like he was nervous, but it worked, and it worked for that week, so that's good for him. I was impressed with how tight the spiral was. Like some of his gun it to DK on those 10 and outs or those dig routes, I was like, damn, Geno, like that looked really good. The only reason I'm going to say yes, Goz believes this, is it's not like Drew Lock is a rookie. It's not like it's the future is for sure going to be Drew Lock. It's just a matter of when. Let's take, for example, Pittsburgh situation. Like we all know Kenny Pickett eventually is going to get his chance. Why does Drew Lock need another chance? Like, I don't think that this is an organization or a fan base that's just like, yeah, let's groom Drew Lock. No, it's who's going to give us the best chance to win now, and I don't think Drew Lock deserves another chance.
Ooh, that last part, Chet, you sniffed me out there. I do not believe Geno Smith will be the starter for the Seattle Seahawks for their entire season. And fantasy element of it is,
so
let's talk about 17 weeks. If we think Geno's the starter, doesn't he have fantasy value if you're a 17-game starter? Seattle's in first place, by the way. And they've got DK, and they've got Penny. So it's hard for me to believe that, but it's exactly what Chet said there. Once Pittsburgh gets a situation where they cap out with Trubisky, once San Francisco caps out with Garoppolo or Lance, Jordan Love is still on the bench in Green Bay. Sam Darnold is on the IR, but you have way too many expensive quarterbacks sitting on the bench. And Geno Smith had one good game in front of the 12th man with an entire summer to prep, with a guy clipping on his heels to potentially take his job. I've got 7 years of Geno being bad, and I've got one good game. So I do not believe Geno will finish the season as a starter. My other one, Justin Jefferson can be the greatest fantasy football wide receiver ever.
I'm 110% on this. Justin Jefferson was number 2 behind Jonathan Taylor. If I had the number 1 pick, it would have been Jonathan Taylor. But if I was number 2, like to snap my fingers, it would have been Justin Jefferson. Especially if they can maintain this offense that they have now. It's obviously not going to be intact the entire time. You saw Justin Jefferson get wide open, and if you're any team, we have to contain Jefferson, like game plan on defense, and the way that they just let Justin Jefferson run free. I don't think was just defensive breakdowns. I think there was a lot of awesome offensive schemes going on using Justin Jefferson in multiple different spots, slot, out wide, in tight. Like, he was all over the place and just getting open. And from a fantasy side, his volume is through the roof. Kirk Cousins will force him the ball. He'll give him the jump balls. I am on board with that. I think Justin Jefferson can and will be the best fantasy wide receiver that we've ever seen.
Oh, man. So you said just has the potential. That was the
phrasing of it. I'm shocked that you're hesitating with your love affair for Jefferson, who you called from years ago, with your wife's connection to Louisiana.
Yeah.
I put the accent mark over there. I'm sure Cam didn't like that, but she says it probably better than I do.
He is in such a good situation. I'm going to say yes. Just because I think you do believe that. He is in a perfect situation. Adam Thielen is on the decline, so there's not a lot of competition for targets. We saw how active they were in getting him the football, bringing over Sean McVay style. We're putting him in situations where I think I saw like a ridiculous amount of his routes he was being guarded by a linebacker. Now, I hope defenses can figure out a way to, you got to shout out. You can't let that happen again, because he was a linebacker is never going to be able to keep up with Justin Jefferson. But if they continue to be creative, he's going to have the largest target share. I mean, it's kind of funny that I'm saying this, because the other option is literally Cooper Kupp. Like, Cooper Kupp just came off of the best wide receiver fantasy season in terms of PPR we've ever seen. And he's still really good. But I think because he's going to have a massive target share, you guys are both believers in Kirk Cousins and the MVP campaign of Kirk. So, yeah, I think you do believe that Justin Jefferson can have the best fantasy season ever.
Yes, and yes. Potential MVP of the league for Justin Jefferson. In our lifetimes, we talk about great wide receivers ever. Just no particular order. Darrell Owens, Randy Moss, Larry Fitzgerald, Reggie Wayne, Torrey Holt, Isaac Bruce. Like, look, Jerry Rice is a little bit older in that generation, so I'm leaving Jerry Rice out of that conversation. But Justin Jefferson, statistically, has had the greatest start to any wide receiver ever in the history of the NFL. Now, look, he has an additional regular season game. He's got rules that benefit wide receivers, and he's got a pass happy. Doesn't matter. Like, the stats are there. And he's done it with two different coaches now. Kupp's done it with just McVay. Jefferson's done it with two different people and more consistent in college at a bigger level. Yes. Like, we're talking about potentially watching an all-time great in the history of the sport in the prime of his life right now, which is really cool. And I'm just a huge fan of what he can do for the future. Either one of you guys can go next year with, believe it or not, some statements after week one. Chet Davis has his hand up for our audio audience. Chet, go right ahead.
All right. Do I believe that A.J. Dillon is a better fantasy option than Aaron Jones for the rest of the season?
No. And I will say that for the main reason that we saw the carries go heavily, and I will stress heavily. He doubled Aaron Jones's carry count. I believe he had 10 carries, and AJ had 10. Aaron Jones had 5. However, while Dillon got a ton of targets this week, he doesn't have the explosiveness that Aaron Jones has. So I don't believe you do, because of all the struggles that the atrocious struggles that we saw from that receiving core. I think we talked a lot about how Aaron Jones could be that potential leader for receiving. So I'm going to go with no. A lot of it is going to lean, though, on the receiving side of it versus A.J. Dillon.
Ooh, this is a good one. I'm leaning towards yes, because it feels as if Green Bay wanted Aaron Jones to be better, they just put him on the field. And it seems more and more they're just taking him off the field. I know there was a weird stuff with this contract. He was like Juju Smith-Schuster, where if it wasn't COVID, he might have got a huge payday somewhere else, and it just never worked out that way for Aaron Jones. The writing's on the wall. They don't want him to be the guy anymore. I just like this comparison for Green Bay fantasy-wise and that whole team, a whole offense. Aaron Rodgers hated Christian Watson during the game. Like, he was just giving the rookie evil eyes. I compare it to, remember the late Kobe Bryant career where he's playing like with Swaggy P and D'Angelo Russell, and he's like 14 years older than all of his teammates, and there's just like no chemistry. That's Aaron Rodgers in the offense. All these guys are like 15 years younger. Rodgers is doing the peyote and all these, and the other guys are on TikTok. There is no chemistry. So I would go with you believe Dillon is going to be the option going forward. I don't know how that correlation continued, but you know where I was going.
It's so tight. And I'm more optimistic for Dillon. So I'm going to say yes. I'd prefer to have A.J. Dillon for the rest of the season. 2 reasons. 1, we saw the goal line work go to Dillon. There wasn't a lot of goal line options in that game. And 2, somehow A.J. Dillon was the top target for Aaron Rodgers in that game. Out-targeted not only Aaron Jones, but out-targeted everyone on that team. Now, Allen Lazard hopefully gets back on the field to make this offense better. But in a game where Green Bay was trailing for the majority, I would have expected more run from Aaron Jones. I think A.J. Dillon is your second half sledgehammer. That's the guy you want in there when you have a lead. Kind of similar to what we talked about with Derrick Henry. Let that guy be the punisher, the guy you run on first and second down and you're trying to bleed the clock. That wasn't the case. He was getting run in a game where you were trailing and he was getting the passing work. And so if that continues combined with goal line work, I actually like A.J. Dillon. He's the younger guy. I think he fits Green Bay better. When it gets colder at Lambeau, you get the big quads of A.J. Dillon coming at you. Who wants to tackle that guy when you can't feel your fingers? Like, the guy's a monster. So I am torn. I'm not as nervous with Aaron Jones, to be honest. I think he is going to bounce back, and I think he'll get plenty of work to make him fantasy relevant. I'm not going to overreact and say, you can't start Aaron Jones. I think he's going to be fine. I think that the Packers will be fine. Like, if the rookie Watson didn't drop that pass, it's a completely different game. Like, no one was helping Rodgers, and I think that will change. So yeah, but I think I do lean towards, I feel better with A.J. Dillon this week and moving forward.
Mine. I struggled with trying to place where they're gonna be at the end of the season because of the insane wide receiver performances that we saw in the insane top of the charts wide receivers that I have. But mine is, do I believe that A.J. Brown is going to finish as a top 8 wide receiver this year?
Yes. Top 8, yes.
Yep.
It couldn't have been a better debut. He was a target monster for Jalen Hurts. The only reason I would hesitate for both you and me, like if I'm thinking as I am Kyle Ray or I'm thinking as Chet Davis, is can he stay healthy? And I know it's a tough game to play, but he's got some old knees, man. Like, what is he, 25? I think he's 24, 25 years old, but he's got the knees of a 35-year-old. Like, having double knee surgery 2 off seasons ago, last year, couldn't stay on the field for the whole time for Tennessee. So if we're excluding that and we're saying, assuming that he and all the other top wide receivers stay healthy for the whole year, I think he is a top 8 wide receiver because of the target share. Jalen Hurts he's got some nice balls, Jalen Hurts has some nice balls. Like, it's just a tight spiral. It's a perfect match. I think that offense is going to be scary all year, and that's the clear number one option right now.
No order here, but Kupp, Jefferson, Chase, Adams, Diggs. Now we're talking A.J. Brown, right?
Yeah.
Because like CD Lamb got hurt, Dak's hurt. So CD Lamb's kind of out of that conversation. Keenan Allen's hurt, so he's out of that conversation.
Mike Evans.
Yep. He was good enough.
Pittman.
Yep. He was solid. We'll see if Matt Ryan gets really old really fast. I not only believe it, I wouldn't be shocked if we have a mass text going next Sunday and Ray changes pick to top 5 or top 6. So yes, I do believe it as well.
How many weeks in a row, like dating back to last season? So people don't know, we have a group text. It used to be on Twitter, RIP, which was so funny. It was like the only group text for me that took place on Twitter. Like that's just where we would send our messages. But then somehow Kyle effed it up and it failed. And now we all don't get the messages. So it's a more normal text thread. But how many Sundays in a row, dating back to last season, has one of us texted the phenomenal one? Like we're talking months, weeks and weeks. We're just once a game we're going to text each other the phenomenal one, which if you don't know, that's Goz's nickname that he gave AJ Brown for just having his ridiculously, he's a playmaker. Like he's guaranteed once or twice a game to just be like, wow, AJ Brown just did that.
A lot of people may hate this take, but he has flashes of Calvin Johnson. Just massive, really good hands. His route running is what holds him back a little bit from the. But then you look at the size of him, the breakaway speed. You get AJ Brown running down the field, you're not catching him. He just has some of those flashes of what Calvin Johnson used to do with what he was. So, but yes, AJ Brown, I do believe. I struggled, like I said, with putting him. I almost put him in the top 5, but you guys listed a bunch of names. I think Evans now takes the place up in top 5 with the injury to Godwin. He was just being looked at all the week, but the targets, and we talked a lot about this last year. If Jalen Hurts could get some help at the wide receiver spot, Jalen would be deadly. And you saw as soon as Jalen Hurts, I don't think targeted him in the first quarter, if I'm not mistaken. And then the second quarter, he threw a couple to and that's when Jalen's eyes lit up and he goes, "Oh, I have a wide receiver that can catch." And then he started forcing the ball to AJ Brown. 13 catches on the day, 20 points. I 100% agree. He's going to be the focus. I really do think he has even potential to finish top 5 if he has some of those big games. And giant asterisk, can his knees stay in the game?
Hey, Kyle, how tall do you think AJ Brown is?
AJ Brown, he is what? He's like 6'2"?
6'1".
6'1"?
He does play bigger though. Like he's one of those guys that like, the only reason you know he's shorter sometimes is when he stands next to like the tight end and you're like, oh wow, AJ Brown's not as big as I thought. But he just plays big. I don't know what it is.
He's a big body. He's
thick. 2 C's.
I was gonna guess 6'4", by the way. So I
right?
definitely
That's what
agree
I mean,
with that
like,
point. Yeah.
Well, because you can also like he's like his twin is DK Metcalf, right? Like they both played at Ole Miss. They're boys. They were, the flexing photos. You're like, damn, both. And then you just assume that they're both 6'4", 6'5". But yeah, AJ Brown somehow just plays a lot bigger than 6'1".
That worked out well, guys, to believe it or not, first week segment. That might be sticking around a little bit longer than I thought. We all kind of got our takes in for the week, and I think as this season evolves, we're going to watch more and more fantasy players drive us crazy. Now, it is week 1. We mentioned some injuries already, so we are back with some waiver wire moves. I know Ray usually leads the waiver wire, but I am jumping in front of the line. I might do it as well for our plays coming up too. The host of the show, not respecting his co-host, taking the lead for himself. I got to start off with the tight end position though, because I think it was Ray as well who mentioned the tight ends, how awful they were week 1. Depending on your scoring, you may have had just 8 tight ends, 8 score double digits. Potentially that's half your league. Everybody's got to start a tight end. How do you get 8? Oh, and 2 of the 8 were Taysom Hill and OJ Howard. So it's a bad time to be a tight end in fantasy football. But I would mention Hayden Hurst for the Cincinnati Bengals. He is very much available in most leagues. He got 8 targets in that Cincinnati Wild Pittsburgh game. So look, you can look back and say that Pittsburgh game was almost a tie. It was overtime, a lot of offensive plays for Cincinnati. Cincinnati was trailing, so they had to throw the ball more. It could be as simple as that. But it feels like after week 1 where you've drafted a team and you might have an issue, if you just need somebody for the rest of the season, you want to get somebody before somebody else in your league does. My number 1 waiver wire move, and maybe the only person I'd even consider, depending on your roster and injuries, is Hurst for the Bengals at the tight end position because of how awful that thing looks right now.
Interesting. One of my waiver wire guys is also a tight end. Gerald Everett. Give me some Gerald Everett for the Chargers, and this kind of bleeds into my week 2 players for the stardom. Perfect situation for him. Justin Herbert has produced some fantasy relevant tight ends early in his career. And with the Keenan Allen injury with the hamstring, we don't know if he's going to be able to go tomorrow. This is Wednesday that we're taping this. So tomorrow's Thursday Night Football. And that's a big game against Kansas City. That's not only a divisional rival, we expect it to be a shootout. I'm assuming Vegas has it as probably one of the highest scoring games of the week. And we saw Everett find the touchdown last week when Keenan was out. 3 receptions, 33 yards, and a touchdown. I think we've just been waiting for a while for Gerald Everett to take that step when he was with the Rams and then with the Seahawks. And he's one of those athletic tight ends. Like, he's certainly not a blocking tight end. He's almost just like a slower receiver who plays tight end, I hate to make the comparison, but kind of reminds you of Hernandez for the Patriots.
Yes.
Right? He's kind of that kind of player. So yeah, I think he's a guy that on waivers, if you were stuck with, granted, it was a monsoon, but I'm sure Cole Kmet didn't make you feel very good. There were some other tight ends that did not overwhelm in week 1. Gerald Everett could be a good guy to slide in there, and I think it's just a really good matchup for week 2.
And killed a lot of people, but I had Hayden Hurst as one of my options as well. Especially with the one thing we didn't mention, the T. Higgins injury. They've announced it was a concussion, so I'm expecting him to be back relatively quick, but he could be a quick win you a week or two, possibly as the number 2 option, maybe the number 3 behind Boyd. I'm going to keep the theme here, though. My number 1 option this week was actually Tyler Higbee out of Los Angeles. And for me, I looked at the performance of tight ends. I looked at the amount of hawking that a Will Dissly did and a Swain for Tennessee did of just hawking a bunch of stuff. Targets matter this year at the tight end position. Higbee got 11 targets in that Rams-Bills game. Stafford had no time to throw. He only, I think, caught 3 or 4 of them for like 34 yards. So you're sitting there going, what the hell's wrong with you, Kyle? You're insane. 11 targets. He appeared to be the clear number 2 option for Stafford. Robinson, I think, had 2 or 3 targets. Obviously, you have Cooper Kupp. But 11 targets at the tight end spot is a really big deal. If you ask me, he's only owned in 55% of ESPN leagues. So he's there. So I think if you are in one of those positions where you just had an Austin Hooper or one of those guys go out and just put up a dud, Higbee could be one that you throw in there and say he gets 8 targets, but catches 6 of them for 60 yards. You might be in a good spot. And don't forget, Higbee had some flashes of being a really strong tight end in a lot of situations. Just the game plan sometimes flows away from him with Cooper Kupp there and last year with OBJ. So I don't hate the Tyler Higbee ad. So we'll see more where that happens. But just like all of my picks outside of the quarterback, if you lost Dak, it might be smart to hold a week and just see what the volume does. I think you could be hitting a home run with some of these guys, but you also don't want to go in there and say you have Cole Kmet panic that you need a tight end and then all of a sudden start Higbee and then Cole Kmet pops off in a normal situation game. So depending on that situation, you might want to keep a look at it.
Yeah, the waiver wire early in the season is probably the least active. Again, week to week, depending on that. Sometimes the postseason isn't as active as much, but sometimes there's just a matchup that jumps out of nowhere. So you're like, I haven't had this guy on my roster the entire season, but if he's going to win me a championship and he's sitting there, I got to go get him. Trade deadlines, all that stuff plays a huge factor as we move forward into that. And we move forward into week 2 now. Guys, we're talking about our 3 favorite players that you're thinking about putting in your lineup, a little bit off the grid. But before we give our picks for week 2, let's tell you about our friends over at Johnstone Supply in Troy. The warmer weather is slowly moving out of upstate New York. Fall weather is here. My favorite weather, the hoodie and the short look. There's nothing better. That September, October, fall outfit. And now you're going to make sure your house is heated properly, though, with the winter on the way. Whether it's your furnace, your boiler, the AC unit maybe got kicked a little bit, whatever it might be, our friends over at Johnstone Supply in Troy can help you, even if it's simple as a phone call. Maybe there's some issues this past summer. You can lean on somebody to help you out. It's 518-272-5922. Save it in your phone. Remember it when something goes wrong in your home. 518-272-5922. That's Johnstone Supply in Troy. Johnstone Supply NY is the Facebook. Rex is only deciding to come over during live reads, by the way, today. So our sponsors are happy. Johnstone Supply NY. Before we get to, I guess, our 3 plays, Chet, you had a little buy or sell thought you wanted to get into. Is there a team you loved or something else you wanted to hit on there?
Yeah, I think we all, if you have an underwhelming debut in fantasy, you kind of hit that panic button a little quick because you're like, oh man, my team's not as good as I thought it was. I don't want to go 0-2. Do I start trying to work some trades early? Maybe there were some injuries, yada, 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 where you lost Dak Prescott. And now you're like, oh, do I want to target someone's backup quarterback and do a 2-for-1? So I'm going to give you guys some names and we're going to play buy or sell.
Yeah.
So it's it gets a little complicated because you can view it as you don't have this player. Are you buying it or staying away? Or if you have the player, are you staying or selling? So that's how you kind of look at it, right? So let's start with number 1. Derrick Henry. Are you buying or selling?
Buy.
Go ahead, guys.
I'm going to go buy because I think Tennessee might suck. Like, I don't know what happened to that team. I know A.J. Brown's good, but they lost to the Giants. They kicked me out of my survivor pool. They were the best team in the AFC, and there was a play that went viral of Derrick Henry getting depleted. Derrick Henry off the edge. I would buy now just because, and Chet, you gave it like some people are hopping off the bandwagon. You talk about consistent running back. It's rare to even say that word in fantasy anymore. Right now in September is buy, but I will reevaluate that stock in October. Right now, still buy for me.
I am actually a sell on Derrick Henry, and I'm not gonna lie. The main reason was there was an insane stat that I was listening to a podcast last night. I listened to a lot of Bill's podcasts, and one of them was how he has declined in a yards after contact significantly over the last 4 years. So I only have a couple of them. Back in 2019, he averaged 4.16 yards per carry after contact. He then dropped to under 4. He's lost almost an entire yard after contact. And then the usage just scares me. So if I'm an owner, I'm selling him, and that offense is really bad. I see how defenses are going to be able to focus in on Henry and say, name a wide receiver on the Titans outside of Robert Woods, who is old and has A.J. Brown knees. And I'll let those guys beat me. I'll let Ryan Tannehill beat me. I'm not going to let Derrick Henry beat me. But the decline of Henry we're starting to see, and we saw some of it yesterday with literally, I think that's such a big deal. Derrick Henry doesn't get run over. He got absolutely trucked. So I'm selling. I don't think the production is going to continue to keep up. And knowing myself, in 3 weeks, I'm going to be kicking myself, doubting the rushing champion.
The king. I'm with Kyle. I'm selling, but I'm not giving him away for free. Like, I would definitely want a big return. You hope that his underwhelming week 1 doesn't scare people away too much. You don't want his stock to continue to fall. So I would kick the tires and see what people are willing to give up. From if I don't have Derrick Henry, I'm staying away because I don't want to give up too much for something that I think we all have some concerns when he's not a pass catcher and it's an offense that's not going to be great. And if he's not ripping off those huge after contact runs, it could be a long year for Derrick Henry managers. Number 2, are you buying or selling Mike Williams? Mike Williams had 2 receptions for 10 yards, had 4 targets in week 1. And it's worth noting, Keenan Allen exited that game in the first half. And the targets and receptions did not go up for Mike Williams. They also did not go up for Josh Palmer. So it was one of those weird games where it was like the wide receiver 3 and 4 that was making the emergence in the tight end. And what do you guys think about Mike Williams? Is that a guy you want to target and you think he's going to have better days ahead? Or a guy that you're out, you're selling, you want to stay away?
I think I'm going to buy. And I think the only reason is I cannot give up on the passing game yet. I think when you could tell Keenan Allen was the offensive game plan against the Raiders that week. I mean, before he got injured, he had 4 targets, 4 yards, and he went out early in the second quarter, if I'm not mistaken, and he did a lot with those yards. So they also didn't have like a terrible day on the ground. They were getting some decent chunk plays. It kind of came all over the place, but they were also spreading the ball out. I think I'm going to hold tight. I would probably look at buying him if somebody was like, "Oh, I'm panicking on Mike Williams." I don't think he can be that bad all year. He's not hurt. He's still Mike Williams. And then I think you hit the nail on the head with nobody else saw the production increase. Josh Palmer, Gerald Everett didn't really see the production increase. His was a normal target share. It was that Carter kid who benefited,
DeAndre Carter,
and some of the additional backs getting some receiving touches with Kelly and Eckler. Like, I'm not scared. I think I'm still buying. I'm not going to sell on Mike Williams. I think I would stand firm with Mike Williams and hold.
Goz, you would know this. Isn't
I-
DeAndre Carter a former Syracuse running back?
I knew you were going to say that. And DeLone Carter, who I
DeLone!
believe you cover. Yep, I think you covered
I knew it
DeLone
was
Carter.
close.
I also think DeLone Carter played in the camp for the Chargers too, which even makes it more confusing.
That's
They both were on the Mike Williams. Remember me and a shirtless potential live show? Mike Williams. Remember Mike Williams outside of the top 10? Here's the thing with Mike Williams. Can't sell. I have to do buy because I can't sell. Because the potential of what he's going to be able to do over whatever the number is. 1, 3, 4. Not knowing Keenan Allen's status and how good Herbert, man. Every week I'm just watching Herbert. Like, this guy's unbelievable. He's so good. And I'll just do it one more time. He's better in the pros than he was in college, which is just remarkable to think about. So I can't sell. It could be no, I'm not selling Mike Williams.
Are you buying?
Yes.
You're going after him. You're going to try to take advantage of a panicked manager. I agree.
Yes.
I want to go after him. Better days ahead. We love this guy. Are you buying or selling Cordero Patterson? Guy's coming off 22 carries, 120 yards, and 1 touchdown, 3 receptions for 16 yards, total half-point PPR, 21.1. I feel like we're all waiting for the wheels to fall off Cordero Patterson. It didn't happen last year. He's continuing it now, even with the rookie, Tyler Algier. Like, are you holding tight with Cordero? Are you selling? Are you going after him? What are you doing?
I'm going to let Scott, since he benched him this week.
Thank you. You know what? Hey, 1 point victory, baby, in my debut in the Dynasty League. 1 point win. That's right. I did have Patterson on my bench. That was a quick score by Patterson, too, right? Like within the first half hour of week 1 action. This is a weird comparison, but I think you guys are going to know what I'm talking about. Remember the final year of DeMarco Murray in Dallas? Where like we had a long list of Murray being a below average to average fantasy running back. And then he had that monster season. They did Tennessee and Philly. That whole year, it was like, you got to sell DeMarco Murray. Like, this cannot continue to happen. As
He
much
was
as
the
I have
rushing champ that year, right?
Yes. Yeah, he did. He won the rushing title that year. As much as I do have Patterson on rosters, the answer still feels like to me sell. Because we mentioned earlier the zero running back people who are just dying for any type of production. The price you can get on Patterson is so high. And the future of what the offense is going to look like for Atlanta still feels inconsistent. If Cordero Patterson finishes in the top 15 again, good for you, man. You revolutionized football. I would sell because people are so desperate for running backs in leagues. It's good enough. And if you've got 2 good running backs, he's probably not going to be a starter for you anyways.
That was you hit the only reason I'm on the sell train right now is because of what you said. He went in the 6th or 7th round in most drafts. You more than likely have your running backs, and after that game, you can say Cordero's back, and can you get another wide receiver 1 and still have confidence in your running backs? I'm very much though sitting on the fence. I want to keep him because again, he hasn't stopped. He continues to be the focal point of that offense. And I think that Falcons offense can be a significant step up with Mariota. I think Mariota showed some really good things last week. The only thing you got to be afraid of with Mariota is him hawking some of those rushes because he did rush a ton. So I think I'm 2 feet over on the sell fence just because there are some things on that offense that I don't like. And can he keep it up? But again, Cordero Patterson, you can't deny what he's got. So I also think to everybody's point, like, say you were a zero running back god and that was your running back 1. You ain't going to sell him. You're going to keep him. So
I guess we should probably change this to, I know we just debuted this for this heading into week 2. Maybe it should be stay or sell. Are you staying or are you selling? Because we're getting confused of like, do we have the guy or do we not have the guy? Are we going after him or are we cutting him? I lean towards sell. I think, as Goz said, teams are always desperate for running backs, and a lot of running backs. I mean, the next guy I'm about to mention, Cam Akers, had a 0. So there's teams that need running backs. He's 30 plus years old and he's finally discovered himself. I just don't know how long it's going to last. So yeah, I'm probably selling on stock is really high for Cordero. So let's go with Cam Akers. Staying or selling on Mr. Cam Akers with the emergence of Darrell Henderson, the Achilles injury. Like we saw him come back last year. He wasn't very efficient in that late regular season and in the playoffs, but a goose egg for Cam Akers on Thursday Night Football against the Bills. Are you staying put or are you selling and you're cutting ties?
Unfortunately, you have to stay.
Because what are you getting?
What are you getting?
Yep.
Like I would I'm just kind of looking at my league right now, and if I was to go after Cam Akers, I would literally offer like an Isaiah McKenzie. Like, hey, I'll take him off your hands. Here's somebody that you can throw in your flex on a bye week because you need a wide receiver. He'll at least play. He'll at least get some catches. Here you go. But you have to stay. Now, if I was, and I think this goes back to how do we word this, it should maybe be buy, stay, or sell. I would potentially look at buying him. Can you get him for something super cheap like an Isaiah McKenzie? And guess what? He's in the doghouse with McVay. Do we think, is there a possibility that he comes out of it? Maybe. And guess what? If he could even be a flash of what he was, there's 12, 13, 14 points for you that you just got Isaiah McKenzie for a consensus third round, fourth round pick in some leagues. So if you can buy him for that cheap, go for it. But unfortunately, if you're an owner, I don't know what you're going to get for him.
I've nicknamed AJ Brown the Phenomenal One. I'm ready to start the new nickname for Cam Akers, Crypto Cam Akers, where he feels like cryptocurrency, where at some point you're like, I don't know what he's worth. I can't sell this, right? Like I have to hold. I have to stay. I don't know what's happening. At some point, Crypto Cam Akers is going to have a back-to-back week performance with like 15 carries, 120 yards, double-digit fantasy, and you sell as fast as possible. Get the hell out. I don't know what this thing is worth. I don't know what I'm doing with Cam Akers on my team. Probably kept him with a keeper in a late round. Get out. Crypto Cam Akers. You're right. Nobody can sell him right now. But we're going to figure out what this is all about, or maybe never will, and just assume it's valuable years from now, like cryptocurrency.
We all agree Cam Akers goes on your bench, right?
100%.
You cannot play him.
Nope.
You want to be a week late on Cam Akers getting out of the doghouse.
Yep.
Okay. Last one, and I'm waiting for Kyle's eyes to fall out of his head.
I'm going to sit back here.
Are you staying or selling on the high value of Gabe Davis?
Ooh.
Gabe Davis scored the first touchdown. Correct me if I'm wrong. First touchdown of the year, right? He had the first touchdown. Go ahead.
Those offense, or fifth in a row.
The first touchdown against the Rams on Thursday night. Everyone who reached on Gabe Davis, if you want to call it that, went high on him, was like, I told you, Gabe Davis, the guy that scored a bajillion touchdowns against the Chiefs in the AFC divisional round. He only had 6 targets. He had 4 receptions for 58 yards and that touchdown, a 16% target share on an offense that we all love. Kyle more than most, being a Buffalo Bills diehard fan. Stephon Diggs is clearly the number 1. Gabe Davis looks like the clear number 2, but we also saw Isaiah McKenzie find the end zone, and he was so confident he would find the end zone that he did a baby gender reveal for his, I believe, sister-in-law. He was so confident he would score. We saw Jamison Crowder get some targets. Dawson Knox is still there. What do we think? Do we think that you should take advantage of people loving Gabe Davis, or do you stay because you're very confident that you have a solid wide receiver option for the rest of the year?
Guys, I'll let you go first.
Gotta stay. You have to stay with Gabe Davis. The number's too high. Like the potential of what, 25, 30 points in PPR leagues, that's not out of the question. The playoff performance, I know you want to make your team better by potentially selling him. If you're in a really bad spot, I mean, trading Gabe Davis after week 1 is brutal. No, you've got to stay because he can make you a regular season champ. Like that's the type of offense he can put up. And week in and week out, he can be a top 5, top 3 scoring wide receiver. So I'm staying for sure.
I am staying. If you can get that, like, I think this goes out to one. Throw your feelers out there. Can you trade a Gabe Davis for somebody who has 3 or 4 running backs, and can you get an Austin Eckler who's low, and all of a sudden they say yes, great. Now that might be a stretch, but I'm with Goz in the stay, and I think the main reason why is overreactions to week 1. 16% target share is scary. Josh Allen was slinging it to everybody and their brother. I mean, for God's sake, Zach Moss had six catches. Like, what? So I do think this role will evolve as the season goes on. Gabe is going to be one of the primary focuses in the offense. And then when you have Stephon Diggs on the other side, who at some point it is going to be pick and choose your poison. Who are you going to let beat you, Stephon Diggs or Gabe Davis? But I think most teams will agree, I'm going to let Gabe Davis beat me over Stephon Diggs, and I think it's going to give him the options. I think you stay, especially getting that many points on just 6 targets. It just makes sense. But again, if you can sell for super high and get a number 1 running back or even get like a number 1 wide receiver and a low end running back, why not? I mean, take advantage of the value there. But if I'm the owner, I have Gabe Davis in one of the leagues, I'm staying. I'm keeping him.
Chet, your mic.
I thought I clicked it. I got crying babies and barking dogs, so I figured it'd be the polite thing to mute myself. I know Goz can appreciate that. I'm staying, but I'm with Kyle, and I'm just putting out feelers. Like, I'd love when I'm not saying Gabe outperformed his ADP. I think he performed exactly what we expected. It wasn't like a crazy debut with the 4 catches and a touchdown. But if I can get a clear number 1 on a team, like I don't think you're getting one of those top 5 guys that we mentioned, but maybe one of those guys that's, right outside the top 8, top 10, something like that. I'm putting out a feeler because if I can improve my team, it's always worth checking. I am with you guys though. I think Gabe Davis I believe in the talent. I believe in the offense. He might have some weeks where it is the Stephon Diggs show or it's the slot receiver show or something like that. But I think more weeks than not, you're going to feel pretty good about what Gabe Davis gives to you. All right, that's what I have for our, if you want to call it buy or sell, stay or sell, buy or book it. I don't know. We'll figure out how we want to, name that moving forward. I want like something like, marry, love, kill. But even that makes it complicated because it depends on if you have the guy or if you don't have the guy.
And we are anti-murder here on We Talk Fantasy.
Are we?
Against.
I kind of beg that one.
Let's do this to close out the show. I like this. We're trying new stuff here in week 1. I like where this is going. Let's do this. Let's give just one favorite play. However, this weekend, Saturday or Sunday, all 3 of us will add our other 2 plays on We Talk Fantasy. So social media, follow us, We Talk Fantasy on our audio and visual side. The handles are all there. So we'll add 2 more regardless of position. But right now, when we're taping on a Wednesday morning, one player, regardless of position, you think can be a lineup productive player that people aren't talking about. I'm going to lead off first on this one, guys. I don't know what team has a more important matchup for the rest of the season here in week 2. Is it the Patriots taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers? Patriots are 0-1. Or is it the Miami Dolphins at 1-0 taking on the 1-0 Baltimore Ravens? Because if Miami beats Baltimore, we're having a different conversation about the Dolphins here this season with Mike McDaniel and Tua and everybody else. Way off the board, Cedric Wilson. Okay, Wilson stunk in week 1. 2 targets, barely registered. He's listed at about 4.7 right now on our projections, a half-point PPR in the Dynasty League. But remember, Baltimore last season gave up the most passing yards to quarterbacks in fantasy football at 280 a game. Now, I know there was a lot of injuries in Baltimore, for sure. That was a big reason why. But if Wilson can break out, especially for the non-season long fantasy players, Wilson gets open, Tua's focused on it, Ivy League boy McDaniel sees a matchup and he's open. That's my big play. I think the price is super low on those season leagues and fantasy. Miami has a huge matchup. Cedric Wilson way off the board. That's my play for fantasy in week 2.
I like that pick too, especially with the injury to we're going to try to hear more, but what's going on with Kyle Fuller? That's a big injury for the Ravens.
Where did McDaniels go? Ivy League?
I believe he's Yale.
He's Yale? That doesn't surprise me. He looks like a Yale guy. Kyle, do you want to go?
Yeah, I can go. So my guy that I think a lot of people are just chilling on their bench. We talked a lot about him during the during the year. He was a higher end pick. He was a 4th, 5th round pick in some leagues, maybe 7th in some. But I was very impressed in the monsoon game with Trey Lance. I'm kind of eating some of my words. He had some of those throws in the pouring rain that I was like, how did you get that there? So my eyes are on Trey Lance and Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk is one of my guys that I'm sitting here trying to look at my dynasty league going, how do I work Brandon Ayuk in my lineup? It's easy if Lazard doesn't play, but I'm trying to figure out where can I put Brandon Ayuk to start him, because I am very intrigued to see what's going to go on in this big rivalry game with Seattle. We saw some flashes of Geno. If Geno can do that again, this is going to be potentially another high scoring game. And I think Brandon Ayuk can be one of those guys that brings you home a decent amount of points. So I'm intrigued to see what happens with Ayuk. Now, granted, he only got 2 targets, but again, it was a goddamn monsoon game, so you cannot take too much. But one of those catches was a beautiful float right over the middle. So I'm interested to see what this whole hype was with Trey Lance loving Brandon Ayuk, and see where that can go. So he's one of my guys that I'm trying to figure into my lineup, because I think he's going to have a monster week this week going against Seattle.
The audio audience can't see this, but we just pulled up on the visual side that was my other player. I actually had the tab open, ready to talk about Brandon Ayuk. I was between him and Wilson, and there's another player that I kind of hinted at. So there you go. We are both. I already got my social media post spoiled. I had the notes up on my screen for Brandon Ayuk. All right, Chet. If you have a running back who plays in the AFC East, I'm already completely blown up by my social media picks.
I actually have one written down. Actually, I have 2 of them written down.
Unbelievable.
I'll save those for my social media posts as well. I did not write this guy down because I assumed Kyle was going to pick him. I think Josh Palmer is a must start this week for the Chargers.
Now you spoiled.
Josh Palmer is projected 9.7. I think he's guaranteed a touchdown. That's my bold pick of the week. Palmer finds the end zone. Huge matchup against the Chiefs. This game is in Kansas City. It's on Thursday. We didn't see a lot out of Palmer in week 1, and I was very surprised when Allen went out. I thought, oh man, Josh Palmer's going to have a huge second half in this game. Didn't happen that way. It was DeAndre Carter, which we all knew that DeAndre Carter was going to play well week 1. Yeah, I drafted him.
And Alone Carter, both of them.
Yeah. I want all the Carters. Michael Carter, I want him on my team. He actually played pretty well. No, I think Josh Palmer has a big one. I think this is a game where the Chargers need this. I know it's week 2, but not only is this going to play into end of the season, I think the Chargers leapfrogged a lot of people in terms of where they predicted. I think people are confident the Chargers can win this division. You got to get through Kansas City. You got to prove that you can beat the team that's been winning that division year after year with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. With Keenan Allen and that injury, I don't even know if Keenan Allen would be able to play if this game was on Sunday. The fact that it's a Thursday game, a hamstring injury, it is early. You don't want to lose him and worsen that soft tissue injury. So if he's out, Mike Williams and Palmer, I actually like Palmer over Mike Williams in this matchup. So that's my locket. I have him in a bunch of leagues, and I'm putting him in there. And this is a tip. We always give tips here on We Talk Fantasy. Do not put Palmer in your flex.
Yeah,
he may look like a flex play in terms of points. He is a Thursday night game. Put him as a starting wide receiver. I see it every week. Good fantasy players make the mistake of playing their Thursday night players in the flex just because they are inferior to some of their other players. You're not going to offend your wide receiver 1. Like who's playing on Monday? Here you go. Stephon Diggs should be a flex play this week because he plays on Monday. You put him there because they're the last game. And if something happens to Diggs and he catches COVID or stubs his toe and you have to bench him, you have the most flexibility. That's why it's a flex. You can be flexible. So that's why Palmer, put him as a starting wide receiver and put one of the other wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 in the flex.
Fantastic reminder. And I actually, with the visual side, saw my reaction. Chet saying, I'm like, wait. Oh, what? Yeah, that's right. Fantasy's back. I got to remember that stuff. That's right. COVID, Monday night games, double Monday night games. Even I almost forgot what the hell he was saying, and it makes too much sense now.
I also
thinking
love
about
it too because, guys, I know you're a fan of this. Like, if you're in the playoffs, or you don't have to be in the playoffs. I think you said that there's someone you do fantasy with who every week clears out their lineup,
Yeah.
puts everyone on the bench so that you can't, compare, player to player. I love when someone looks at my team and they're like, it's not that good. And they see my flex is like Justin Jefferson. They're like, why is he in your flex? I'm like, because he plays later. He plays later on Sunday. I love someone going like, this ain't so bad, and then just getting walloped by my flex.
It's so good. It's such a great feeling. All right. The excitement of week 1 has passed, but don't worry. The excitement level is still high for week 2. We are back again next week. Make sure to check out social media and more for updates. We will talk again next week. Enjoy the football, boys.
See ya.